there's not really many people in the food industry who have really embraced technology. You can get away with being ridiculously inefficient as a business and still making good money, good customers, everything ticking over. Coming from the online world, everyone has always ever been a number. I was like, okay, I've come from this world. I'm now in this world. How do I get the best out of that world and put it into this world? Technology was the number one thing. When your website isn't crashing every 3 to 4 hours and your customer's shopping basket doesn't magically disappear, the sales tend to go up.
Welcome to the B2B Experience, brought to you by Big Light, Europe's leading independent experience design agency. In this podcast series, we speak to digital pioneers in B2B and tell real stories of breaking down barriers and delivering change. My guest today is Chris Monery, co-founder of CN Foods. So Chris, you've spent the last 12 years, 13 years building this business. So I think probably a good place to start would give you an opportunity to describe what it is, what CN Foods does and what's different about it.
Yeah, so I mean, CN, it started off by being a sort of quintessential distributor. I mean, I say started off, it's basically, one man, one van. And we have essentially just scaled up from that to what we are now. I'd say our core business is right now, it's basically just getting the correct products in terms of food and drink and alcohol and stuff like that into London-based retail. We have been upping our game in terms of what products we choose to be on the shelves in London. And because we believe that there is demand for higher quality food and drink, and we've been right so far. People are happy to pay a bit more to actually have something that's not going to kill you or something that's a bit healthier or better for you. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of evolved from like virtually nothing to, we have a sales agency. We have a huge amount of trade marketing we do for brands. We obviously have the warehousing. We have the logistics. We have, we fund shops starting up. It's kind of just expanded in every single way. The opportunities now that come in, there's new opportunities coming every day. So yeah, I think if you want to put it in one sentence, it would probably be, yes, we are a food and drink distributor serving London's independent market. Yeah, so basically I started making money when I was about 12. I grew up in the countryside just outside Brighton, and there wasn't any jobs for 12-year-olds. My mum, I'm going to say my mum wasn't really very kind of generous, let's say, with pocket money. So I needed a way to make money. Yeah, so I basically, I sort of dropped out of school. I spent my entire, instead of revising for GCSEs, I spent my entire time, because it's like 2.5 months you get, just solid, just hustling, right? Learning programming, learning web design, and it was a stretch, but it was quite easy to learn, like PHP and CSS and sort of all that stuff that was being used back then. And how to use Photoshop, and obviously I sort of dropped out. I managed to convince my nan to let me move in with her underneath her desk for £50 a week. We started a business basically buying stock from liquidators and flipping it on eBay. And my God, we bought some weird stuff. That didn't really work out too well in the end because basically, let's just say we had a different way of working. I wanted to work 7 days a week, all hours, and unfortunately it wasn't the same. I think at that point I realized it's much more important to be in business with someone who has the same mindset as you, as opposed to someone who is a kind of wants to be an active investor, but it's more like a kind of like silent partner. I found my current business partner, who I've been with since now. Again, I met him down the pub in Southgate. I think again my uncle was talking to him. He had a website selling memory cards. He didn't have a clue about B2C. Obviously for me, I'd spent a lot of my life dealing with B2C online, e-commerce, all that kind of stuff. So we started working together, and we built out some really, we went from like nothing to about 50 grand a week in about 6 months working together. Unfortunately, when you do that and you've got no working capital, if one little thing and you're working on razor thin margins, if one little thing goes wrong, then you're in deep shit. So the whole online game, trying to sell branded consumer electronic accessories, was just a nightmare for us. But then we ended up going, so I think in like 2013, well, no, Hiran's dad had been basically saying to us for a while, like every time we bitch and moan about, oh, this thing's just happened, he says, oh, you guys, you should buy a van, and you should go and buy some cheese at 3 o'clock in the morning from a wholesaler in London, and then go to the shops and sell it for a profit. He'd been going out in his van, picking up bits and pieces from different wholesalers, and then going to his shops and selling it for a profit on a seller return basis. Simple as that. So yeah, we did. So we managed to get hold of a fridge, and managed to get some customers. It was only a couple of days a week we were doing it. But I think after a couple of years of doing it, just a sort of like side hustle, we realized that, I think I was in some like entrepreneurial retreat in San Diego, a lot of like forcing me to kind of like think about things in a different way. And yeah, I realized that, what the hell are we doing trying to run an online business in London that doesn't make us any money, when this food business, the food wholesale industry, you have literally people running about, writing invoices off the back of fag packets, turning up to their customers whenever they want, whenever they feel like it, still somehow making like 100 grand a year, like proper London money. It was like, what are we doing? So we managed to, we disposed of the online stuff, and we just went all in on the food. And we've done that around sort of 2016, 2017. Because we just saw like how, like, the food industry, the food wholesale industry, like the service levels compared to what we were used to online is just, it's just opposite ends of the world. And it's not all about service as well in the food game. It's also about relationships. Coming from the online world, everyone has always ever been a number. Yeah, so I mean, the whole industry, it was absolutely shocking. It was very, very interesting coming into it. I mean, the first thing I was like, okay, cool. Well, look, I've come from this world. I'm now in this world. How do I get the best out of that world and put it into this world? So obviously technology was the number one thing. The number one thing for me, that was the key thing, which wasn't really in the sort of food space at our level anyway. But I think obviously speaking to a lot of people now, there is, hundreds of millions of pounds of revenue sort of businesses, they're still struggling. It's not like they've cracked the code and it's all easy for them now. They're still facing things. So the industry is, when we came into it, it was split into sort of two halves. You had the sort of dominant half, which is the convenience world, which is, the kind of stuff you would get in cash and carries, and in terms of like splits too, in terms of like the sort of product ranges, you had the sort of premium end, the sort of speciality end, which we had no idea about, to be honest. And then, the sort of stuff you find in Whole Foods, the stuff we were dealing with, which was the kind of like poor, cheap, not necessarily poor, but it was like very cheap kind of manufacturer owned brand products, which was sold at a premium price point because they were in convenience stores and people would only buy them when they were desperate. Okay. Now, when I came into it, I saw, it took a couple of years to understand what the hell was going on, but the independent market was dying, right? Now, what I mean by that is, if you go onto every street corner in London, there's a Tesco, there's an Asda, there's, maybe not Morrison's, but, there's a like Waitrose, M&S, there's a big supermarket chain, Sainsbury's on every street corner. And then you see like 4 or 5 independent retailers, like probably on the same road, maybe not 4 or 5, that's a bit exaggeration, but you'd always see and you think, hold on, how are you guys surviving when there's a Sainsbury's there? And the truth is like they weren't, year on year, the sales, the volumes were going down and down and down. And that is because the industry had been kind of monopolized, and there was only there was basically, I think, maybe two wholesalers doing chilled food at the top. There's probably about 25 van drivers, like how we started off, independent van drivers going and buying and selling under their own invoice. So the guys at the top, they controlled the market. They controlled what products you could buy. They controlled the price points. They made sure that people weren't competing with each other. But because of that, it means you would get poor quality products at an extremely high price point. And at some point, I think 2018, I was just like, I tell you what, I'm actually a bit embarrassed by some of the stuff we're selling. Yeah. So then I think end of 2018, we're just like, mate. So, I think in end of 2018, we were like 90% of the stuff we were selling was just like not great. And then now I'll probably say about 97% of what we're selling is like, it's good stuff. Obviously you've got some stuff which is like left over, and you've got customers who've been buying it for 10 years and you can't exactly, and it's a stain on our catalog. But yeah, so basically we found that if you fill up a shop with cool brands that actually serve a purpose, that aren't bad, then people will actually go to these shops to buy those products specifically, because you can't get them in Tesco's, you can't get them in Waitrose. But I don't want to own everything, because, we can't, there's no room then for sort of like innovation and competition, and for new brands. We're in a situation now where basically we have a new brand every day knock on our door and say, look, we've gone around all the shops, all the good shops anyway. So they're interested in buying our products, but they only want to buy it for you guys. Now, obviously for me, my ethos is it's a free market. There should always be room for innovation, for new ideas. I mean, there has to be. But if that means that we have to just suddenly work with every single brand who comes knocking, because 20 or 30 of the shops we work with closely have expressed interest. Yeah, so I'm a bit of a spreadsheet warrior. Despite us moving to ERPs, we end up having to build systems that suit the actual work, as opposed, because the ERPs can never do what we actually need them to do. We really struggled to get our head around. So we just thought, you know what, let's just build it out ourselves. So we found an open source ERP. It's called Odoo, which was ridiculously cheap. Like, considering, we're looking at Oracle, SAP, we locked ourselves in the office. And in 3 months, we completely built out the new ERP, customized everything, done everything we needed to do. Obviously, there's still, we still run half the business on Google Sheets, because that's life. But then, yeah, and I think we went live over Christmas, and we realized we had done basically no testing compared to what we were supposed to do, but we got very lucky. I think the first couple of weeks was a bit dodgy. We sold a few things at a loss. Obviously, people got trained when they needed to do something, as opposed to SOPs being made in advance. And January last year was our biggest ever sales month. I look back now, and it was because when your website isn't crashing every 3 to 4 hours, and your customer's shopping basket they just spent 3 hours working on doesn't magically disappear. the sales tend to go up. Orders just disappearing into thin air. So yeah, it's really kind of like, for us, we just haven't really had a good experience at all ever. Apart from now, where we've essentially done it ourselves with an open source bit of kit, and so far so good. Obviously, our server costs are through the roof. We're like, right, dedicated servers, blah blah blah. But it's something else is that there's not really many people in the food industry who have really embraced technology. And I think that's because it's a kind of like relationship focused business industry. Still, like, it's not just for tech industry where it's all about efficiencies and automation and stuff like that. You can get away with being ridiculously inefficient as a business and still making good money, good customers, everything ticking over. With a sort of attitude, sort of like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Rather than, seeing, okay, what jobs do I have to do on a regular basis, or what repetitive jobs are there, and how do I never do them ever again without outsourcing it to somebody else? Yeah, the technology part. I mean, but how we're kind of like, how we've kind of gone from is, so I think when we were like, right, okay, let's just go all in on this food game, right? Let's just start with that. Obviously, we were doing van sales, which means that you could only sell the goods which were in the back of your van. And, by the time you get to your last customers, you might be out of stock on a load of stuff. I was like, okay, well, and obviously finding van drivers who could also do sales, who could also be trusted to like make up invoices and, do everything correctly. I think we used to like price mark products as well. Like, it was finding people who do that for not very much money either, because, we were broke, we were self-funded, is actually impossible. So I was like, okay, well, why don't we split this up? Why don't we have it so that one guy goes out with an iPad, right, and just we put all the products on the iPad. It goes out with the iPad, and he basically sells what's in the warehouse as opposed to what's in the van. And then I'll be in the warehouse putting goods away, picking orders, putting price marking them, putting it into the back of the van, loading it up. But the only way that works, because you have to then pay to go to the shop twice, not just once. So your order value needs to go up. You need to generate a lot more profit in order to pay to go to the store twice. So I was like, look, let's do that. And then that's when we realized, if we go down this path, then it's not going to be, this business can never be a small business anymore, because it's just all about increasing the average order value at that point. So we did do that, and then we started hiring sales reps. We started like, we started like getting our competition to kind of join us and buying them out, or whatever we had to do to beat them, or to get them to join us. Like I said, there's probably like 20 or 30 independent van drivers, basically just running about like essentially like almost like cowboys, sort of just going around like selling cheese or yogurt or whatever, and like, I'll give you 2p less on this yogurt, and I'll charge you more of this. Maybe you don't really like. Mental, right? And obviously, I think back then I was like, yeah, imagine if I could just convince all of these people to come under one roof. Yeah, then we could disrupt the two people who kind of like in charge of the industry, and then we could go after them. And then after that, we can go up to the next one, which is obviously what we've done. But
Did you manage to convince them?
Yeah, some of them are still working for us after like 7, 8, 9 years. When we were scaling up, obviously our company books were, I think when we started out, we were doing what? I think my Heron's van were doing probably about 30 to 40k in the year. I don't know what his dad band was doing, but it's more than that. But it wasn't like much more. You know, we didn't have any credit rating apart from the people who we work with already, who knew us, who trusted us. So when we were trying to open up new suppliers, we didn't have a volume they needed to buy wholesale. We couldn't get credit out of them because they didn't know us. So basically, it was just like a massive campaign of, making friends with a lot of people very, very quickly. And then once you've got that relationship with them, then, they are willing to kind of like, I'm like, listen, mate, can you, the first order, can you do like half a pallet instead of a full pallet, Or like, they're like, okay, Chris, you know what? I'll charge you full whack for the first one. And then the second one, I'll give you on 30 days credit, blah, blah, blah. But, and obviously, I guess that's common sense in a way. But yeah, in business, in business in this country, yeah, you don't really get any pats on the back for trying. Whereas in other places you do, and that's nice. But in this country, like if you expect to get any kind of like, high five, reward, well done before you actually made it, you're gonna be in for a rough time. Like the sort of delayed, what is it? It's like delayed gratification.
I'd like to go back to, so you talked about when you got going, you need to stop doing that. It's just numbers on the screen. And of course, now everything's tech first and the dirty industries don't get a look in. So I'd like to just explore, because you talked about the ERP, but you also mentioned the website. I know we've had good conversations about AI, how you've deployed e-commerce effectively, digital commerce, and AI to move the business forward. And I know you've got lots of ideas about that as well, and you've got an AI incubator. Let's get into all of that.
The reason why food is expensive is because everyone needs a forecast. No one knows how much food is going to sell. So you've got, for example, if you take like vegetables, supermarkets will go and say to farmer A, right, make me 10 tons of carrots next year. They'll say, all right, cool, I'll do it for you at this price. And then the supermarket will say, yeah, by the way, I need you to make like 30%. I need an extra 3 tons just in case we need it. But if you don't need it, we don't have to buy it. All right. All right, great. So already you've got 30%, well, markup, 30%. You've already got that sort of way spare. I mean, on top of that, then if they're going to sell to a distributor, for example, well, I mean, it might then go straight into the supermarket. The supermarket is like, okay, well, I'm going to probably throw away like 40% of this before it goes out of date, which means that's another cost I need to pass on to the customer, so on and so forth. In the chilled stuff, it's like, I mean, especially in stuff like food service and restaurants, but also for us, we have to factor in that the shop is going to, if you take milk, for example, we might get delivery about 3 times a week. If we can't sell it before it goes past a certain date, we have to give it away to charity. It's great. It's not being thrown away, but it's still lost on our books. The shopkeeper, if they can't sell it by a certain point, they're going to have to throw it away as well. So everyone has to factor into their pricing a certain amount to consider wastage, right? And by using, I say it's more machine learning than AI, but everyone just calls it AI. By our various models, looking at the numbers, looking at all of our sales data, I think it uses something like 160 different variables. I mean, our top model does, but our top model is like, takes bloody ages to load right now. But, because of being able to predict the future will, in terms of like how much you're going to be selling, will in turn reduce a huge amount of wastage and will end up hopefully creating food price deflation, which should be very, very good to see. Because, for us, if we don't need to really, cover our costs in terms of like wastage and stuff like that, we can just drop our price. We can work on less money. The shops can drop their price, and everyone wins. People aren't working for they're not working for food just to be thrown away, essentially. So right now, obviously, we've been developing the model, because in food and drink, there's so many different like variations that can occur. So many variables that need to be plugged in. Already, it's outperforming the current model, which I set up about 5 years ago, which is reassuring. There's obviously still a lot more to be plugged in from a human side of it, from a human intervention thing, but already it's a success. The next step, what we're working on now, is to basically forecast supplier performance. So it's one of the biggest issues we face in our supply chain is the unreliability of our suppliers. Ultimately, we always get our heads kicked in for whatever goes wrong. Ultimately, because we are the people in the middle. So, if a supplier doesn't deliver to us a product and we're out of stock, our customers just say, "Oh, it's your fault." They don't care whose fault it is. They don't care if a person's factory is burnt down and we're not going to have a stock for 2 months. They don't. It's not really. It's our fault at the end of the day. Obviously, some customers are a bit more reasonable than that, but that's the general kind of that's the general experience. So being able to forecast the same way as we're able to predict future sales, being able to forecast supplier errors, let's say, means that we're able to adjust our stocking quantities to account for those supplier errors, which will then in turn increase our availability, despite, because if we know supplier A, the beginning of every quarter, they're always short on this thing, or what was it, like Tony's Chocolate Only this month, they were short on a few products due to excess demand over December. If we can predict these things, and don't ask me how we're going to predict them, because it's half of it is black box in a black box somewhere. I don't understand. I don't, like, non-technical founder. I don't understand how some of these algorithms actually work. But it would make doing what we do, like it would just be, it's like showing a caveman how to make fire, right? In terms of doing what we do. I mean, our availability with our customers is already good. It's not perfect. It's not perfect because supplier issues, human like random things happening. But yeah, I mean, the idea is so for the sort of AI stuff. So they're currently be doing a side quest as well, because a bit like the ERP systems for sales apps, as in like apps for our sales teams to use, take orders with, and do CRM, manage sort of customers' credit and all that sort of stuff. None of them ever seem to work. We've got through maybe the last 5 years, and there's always something wrong, like something major wrong. And it's always the same situation: is you go and speak to the person who is basically selling it. The sales guy works at the company. He says, "Yes, we've got everything," and say, "Oh yeah, no, that feature is about to be released now," and it's not. Turns out it's not actually released until like a year later. They say, "Oh, we don't have any problems here. Don't promise here." Blah blah blah. I mean, you start using it, and it's like, yeah, everything you've said is a lie. But now we're stuck because we've just gone through the whole setup process and integrated it and blah blah blah, and we've just paid you a load of money to set it up. So we decided to build it ourselves. Just build out our own sales app exactly how we need it, with everything on it that actually works. And we sat down in August in the AI team's office, and they were like, yeah, we can get all this done by October. And we were like, there's no way. If you speak to any kind of like normal UK sales app company, they're like, oh yes, it's a development, and it's going to take us 6 months and 15 grand to do, and blah blah blah. And they're like, yeah, no, we can literally build you one from scratch with everything you need, every single feature you can imagine. You want predictive ordering on there, you want push notifications about customers overdue, going to the customers, WhatsApp integration, everything, everything on there we can do by October. And obviously I looked at it and I was like, yeah, bollocks, mate. It's going to be like June next year, their first drop. But they've done it. There's only like, I think there's only like 2 of the 6 people who are working on it as well. They've done it. They smashed it all out. Obviously, there's loads of little bugs which we've been working on the last couple of months. But the sales team have started using it now, and it's unbelievable.
It's another example, really, isn't it, of how you're creating something to help you that ultimately helps the customer. It's the same as going premium with your brands, in a sense. So that's great. Really, really good, Chris. Thank you. So there's a couple more questions. The first question, well, penultimate question, to put it that way, is what's based on your journey? It's been a journey of 2 halves, really, isn't it? The first bit's the chaos of your commercial life with numbers on screens, and the second half has been CN Foods and being able to release that same energy into a market that's less chaotic, but nevertheless, just as interesting. What advice, based on that experience, what's the most important piece of advice you'd have for other people?
I think even if you do hire out outside talent who kind of knows what they're doing, you should still take the time to learn how everything works, because then I think you respect what your people do a lot more. You've got a lot more sort of like appreciation, and because you can understand how everything works together, you're able to find solutions to problems which they may not see. I mean, a lot of time, like for example, right now, I still speak a little bit with suppliers and day-to-day stuff. I still speak to customers. I still speak with the warehouse. I still speak with admin. Still looking at routing, everything. I'm still dealing with I'm somehow account managing a customer right now. It's turned out to be our biggest customer, but just by me doing that is just shed the light on a huge amount of things which we're not doing as a business for our customers, but we should be doing for business as our customers. And I know that because this customer is quite a big customer, and they're so because of that, they're obviously been do things in a different way to us, but they're asking stuff which we should be able to do for them. So it's like, right, okay, well, now let's make that happen. And at the same time, let's go to my buying team and say to them, right, guys, we're not doing this. We need to start doing this at some point. Like, it seems to me like an obvious thing why, and then you end up building out tools to support this one customer, which can then be given to the rest of the business. Yeah, like even just going into the warehouse and putting boxes away, or driving a forklift and unloading a truck. While you're doing that job, you're going to be thinking, right, what's the better way of doing this? How can I solve this problem? So yeah, I mean, I would say, just like, obviously, I'm not saying to micromanage people, micromanage anything. I'm saying go in and get stuck in yourself always to everything. And one more thing, I would say you need to be, being reactive is probably a bit more important than being proactive. That's because in business, stuff goes wrong all the time. And if you're trying to be proactive, you're going to spend the rest of your life planning and thinking of making a plan for every single thing that goes wrong. Whereas if you're reactive, things go wrong all the time. You know, you take a breath, you analyze, you see it, and you focus on how to make sure they don't happen again, rather than getting like pissy or annoyed or whatever about, you know. So yeah, for me, I always look forward. I don't, I rarely reflect, you know. I'm always looking forward, or, you know, being in the present.
Very good. Very good. I don't think you'll ever stop. I don't think you'll ever stop. There's always something else. There's always another opportunity. It's good to hear. I'm going to ask you one final question, which seems a bit odd now in the context of all the things we talked about, but it's a closing question I ask everybody, and you live in the world of B2B. Is there one buzzword or trend in B2B that's very prominent right now that you wish would just disappear, and why?
There's quite a few, as you probably expect. Digital transformation is quite a, it's probably quite an overused sort of buzzword, you know, because, you know, it's all very good going through a digital transformation, but at the end of the day, things need to work still.
I've certainly seen it, and I remember seeing someone put something on LinkedIn where something had been published in a newspaper or good old-fashioned print, and at the bottom it had, you know, would you like me to provide you with a list of stuff that, you know, someone had taken the output from the large language models and it was being published. So thanks, Chris. Quite a story, really. I admire your tenacity. I think very interesting to have grown up and got stuck in at the time, the emergence of, you know, basically stuff happening online, which is interesting. But your entrepreneurial kind of spirit that started so young in life that you still have. There's always another idea, it's great. It's good stuff. So thank you. Thank you for that. And then we can now tackle the fact you've got no online presence at all. And this will be your first online presence.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's become a bit of an issue. I mean, for me, we always keep our mouth shut. We get our head down. We work. We get unbelievable results year on year. But we've done it without needing to boast about it to the world. We've done it without needing to tell people who we are. But unfortunately, it's now got to the point where, you know, we've got quite a few people now who are saying, like, what the hell are you? Like, your numbers are insane, everything's looking amazing. But for a business in 2026 to have zero digital presence of your, you know, your size or whatever is pretty much unheard of. So yes, unfortunately, I've now started encouraging the people at CN Foods to start posting on LinkedIn. And unfortunately, me and Hiran, we're going to have to start doing it too at some point. We're going to have to start saying yes to a few more things.
Well, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, then please visit the Big Light website. There, you'll be able to find other episodes and subscribe to access exclusive content. I'll see you next time.